أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The Urdu में करेंगे इंग्लिश में? Okay. All right. So thank you for coming. Inshallah, I have asked Brother Zishan to have a rerun in person. So inshallah, so as not to disappoint anybody. So the question is, why should we study Islamic history? And why are we here? What role does it play? I think we have a discussion group. Maybe we can have some input from the audience. Why do you think we should learn about Islamic history? So knowing to be proud of our heritage. Anybody else?
Learn from our mistakes.
Learn from the mistakes. And do what? By learning that, what does it... So some people feel like that we are not as technologically advanced, so
in numbers we are so many, but we are not united. And one thing that we need is unity, and I think, and somebody to envision what are the mistakes we make, as well as said, and and work on it, like have some long-term goals for us, so that, right now, since the American best way of attacking all those countries and changing their rulers and creating chaos in the Middle East and all the other nations, there's like a fear of Muslims in the world, and they want to get, suppress them and be down into the world Muslims.
So solution to the problems, right? Learning the solution to the problems. So, for example, why some people say that the people of Jewish faith are so successful. How did they become so successful? How come the Muslims are not being a minority that successful? So in order to do that, what would you do? You have to learn about the history of people of Jewish faith to learn from them what the things that they did and what we can do. Avoid the mistakes that, and then what is happening in Gaza? People are being killed and are facing a genocide. How did they get there, and why did they get there? So these are all the problems that people face, and another problem that is like the age that we are living in. The planet is on the brink of destruction. So what has brought the planet to the brink of destruction? in the last century. And why wasn't the planet Earth was at peril despite 10,000 years of human existence? What is in that last 100 years? So is this the technology or science that did that? These are the questions that Islamic, that history answers.
I think it's important to know history, but you also need to understand that the historical events and the history that we know has been given to us through human beings, through people, right? And people who write history are not devoid of bias. So the information that we have been absorbing since childhood about history is coming through other people that may have had some bias while they were writing history. It's very important to go for the source after the sources that are bias free, and it's not like there are no such books. There have been writers of history who were devoid of bias. So we have to now, as adults, we need to go back, go to those sources and get information about history that is mostly devoid of bias.
Another thing is, Jews have been depicted since I was young as victims of Holocaust, like they were the victims of, and now when they have the power and they have the finances and they have, upper hand, so it, I'm so surprised that people who have been through all this suffering, how can they be causing so much suffering to other people? When they are the dominating ones, how can they, victimize and, like, the genocide and that is happening? How can that be?
Reading history to avoid those prejudices or bias and trying to come to a good solution, or a good assessment. And if somebody comes and tells you that the Muslims were living in dark ages and only the Western and Europeans took them out of that darkness, what does that mean? Because that's what a lot of people are saying. There are some movements, Islamic movements, that they say, well, that the Islamic history is dominated by autocrats and kings, and that wasn't what Islam is supposed to lead to. So they come up with newer interpretations. So what really happened? We have a gap of 200 years when the colonizers colonized the Muslim lands, and we don't know what happened before that. We don't know about the system of government. I mean, there are people who are cussing out the Muslim kings and caliphs, and they're saying that those caliphates or empires were dictatorships. So how do we answer? And so that's one. And then we are living in a totally non-Muslim majority environment. What is our route forward? I mean, what are we supposed to do as Muslims? And what is, how should we use this knowledge to chart a path forward? Those are the questions that Islamic history will, reviewing it, will answer.
So we had, I don't quite agree with that, because some people go backward and go bigger. But under the same time, we are the ones who came up with the numbers we use now, but average them. We were at the top of our feet. We did anything,
Yeah, at one time, but a lot of people say that then after that they didn't do anything, and the Ottomans rejected the printing press, and the Mughals were just building Taj Mahals. So why weren't they inventing things? So these are things that people Our job is not to, as a historian, that people, for example, and I'll go over, but there are things that people don't agree with, right? So, but as a historian, our role is to just look at history as it was and not put our personal biases in. So I will just go over a brief timeline in this 30 minutes or so, even though I worked about 12 hours to extract that timeline. But my intention was not only this audience, but inshallah to pass it on. So I'll just give you the timeline just to give an idea where we are, and then we can take different segments of this timeline one by one. So this is the current Muslim presence in the world. The green areas are where the Muslim population is excess of 50% of, and yellow areas were 10 to 50%. Now I didn't have time to understand which area is that. It will be interesting to see. I just got it from internet. So this area, maybe somebody needs to find out why. That's very interesting. Russia has 10 to 50% Muslims. And they may be spread out. That's interesting. And India, of course, you see all this green. No Muslim armies went to this area. How did that become green? Interesting, And you look at Africa, substantial population there of Muslims. And this, I put down a lot of, I just have like a 27-page document that I made. I was going to go over that, but I'm not. I'm just going to rely on the pictures. So this is one of the most important hadith. And this is Sahih Hadith and Sahih Muslim. If you ask the scholars of Hadith, the Muslim is regarded as more authentic than Bukhari. And this is one of the most authentic hadiths, Hadith Jibreel. So Umar ibn al-Khattab reported that we were sitting at Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A man came in very white clothes and black hair. No signs of travel on him, and we did not recognize him. He sat in front of the Prophet, rested his knees by his knees and placed his hands on his thighs and said, "O Muhammad, tell me about Islam." And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gives a description of what Islam is. That testify no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, to establish prayer, to charity, to fast the month of Ramadan, and perform pilgrimage. Then the man said, "You have spoken truthfully." And Sahaba said that we were surprised. Number one, they were surprised that in Medina at that time, if you would come, there is no air travel. How come a person be not known to anybody, is total stranger, and have pristine, crisp, clear clothes and hair without a speck of dirt? So that was surprising. And then he was asking, and then when Muhammad answers him, he says, "Yeah, you spoke truthfully." So then he asked, tell me about the faith. So faith is to believe in Allah and angels, His books and messengers. The man said, "You have spoken truthfully." And then he asked, tell me about ihsan. Translated here as excellence. And the Prophet ﷺ said, ihsan is to worship Allah as if you see Him. And if you do not see Him, He surely sees you. So, and then he goes on to ask about the finality of the hour, and Rasulullah ﷺ describes the signs, and finally Rasulullah ﷺ told the religion. And this is a fundamental hadith, and it tells you about the different sciences in Islam. So the three main sciences that evolved over a period of time in Islam are what is Iman? So that was the first question, Aqidah or Kalam, creed. And you have had, I think, Imam Hamza Maqbool gave a workshop on Aqidah Tahawiyah. So that's the whole science of Kalam. Then the second is what is Islam? How do you worship Allah? How do you obey Allah? And these are ibadah, how you worship, how you put your foot, how you put your hands in salah, how you bend in ruku, all those little aspects and the big aspects are covered in ibadah and mu'amalat. Mu'amalat are your affairs or transactions. And then you have the family law, and then you have the commercial and civil law, and bodily harm, and then the economic activities, politics, and social activities. So mu'amalat, what the scholars did, they created laws. Now, how you pray, nobody's going to come and arrest you for that, but if you don't pay what you owe to somebody else, so what is the punishment for that? So that is Sharia. So the group of scholars, who do that, we call them the ulama. And these are the people, the mutakallimin, the people who tell you, how to believe, what is the belief, what should be your belief about the Sahaba, what should be your belief, if you don't, what should be your belief about the Day of Judgment, what should be your belief about whether Isa was risen to the heavens or not. If you accept that, then what? So these are the issues. And then akhlaq, ihsan, like how you should be in a state as if you're seeing God. And if you cannot do that, then you should be in a state where you feel like that God is seeing you. رَبَّنَا وَبْعَثْ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. So in several verses in the Quran, the purpose of the Bi'sat of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is to recite the ayat and give hikmah, wisdom, and to purify them. And of course, Rasulullah Sallallahu gives the aqidah and how to follow Allah. And so these are the three sciences. And the fourth area is politics. And we see that in the person of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, all these four areas were combined. So he was the political leader, and he, of course, was the source of all scholarship and knowledge. And after him, the Khulafa al-Rashidun, they were also complete in those four areas. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is regarded as the greatest of the scholars. And then Abu Umar, and then Uthman and Ali. And then after that, Sayyidina Muawiyah, Sayyidina Hassan was Khalifa, and then Sayyidina Muawiyah. But then these areas split. So it wasn't necessary that whoever is the political leader was also the alim. So the Islamic history over the last 1400 years is basically, you have to study these four paths. You need to know what was the timeline in politics. You have to know what how the people thought philosophically, and how did they come up with different thoughts, what is the aqidah, and how did they encounter philosophy, when they came across the Greek philosophy, and then how the scholars dealt with fiqh, how did they deal with Sharia, so, and then akhlaq. So the people who were then taking this job of improving the akhlaq of the people, how to purify them, these were called the muzakkis, and the Sufis. And all through the Islamic history, you see these four areas going parallel to each other. And in order for a person to be a traditional Sunni, you follow one of the approved silsila or chain of all of these. Aqidah, there are the two main schools. You have the Maturidis and Asharis, and then you have the Sharia. You're following one of the four Imams, Imam Hanifa, Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, and Hanbal. You have to be one of them, so you follow one of those. And then akhlaq, there are several chains of tasawwuf. So in order to be, as Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad says, in order to be a card-carrying Sunni traditionalist, you have to have one of, follow one of these. Now, how you pick, for example, in a particular opinion in Sharia, whether you put you select the Maliki way or you put the Hanafi way, that's another discussion. But what is, how did these areas evolve? So that's how you learn, that's what you learn in history, how these areas came about. So the Prophet ﷺ did something in one way, and some Sahabi saw him, and then that Sahabi left and settled in one area. And in that area, the people would start doing things the way that Sahabi explained. So that's how the different processes are different in different schools. This question has been asked in detail about Imam Umar Sulaiman. So, I think I would refer to that talk I can give you, but there are some talks that deal with this question. So I'm not going to answer that. This is a question that has been discussed by the ulama. So this, I'm sure people from Hyderabad must be excited. Isn't it from? So the four pillars of Islamic history have been the politicians, the ulama, the muzakkis, the Sufis, and mutakallimin. And when you go about studying Islamic history, these are the four areas that we have to study. Now, this is the timeline of the major empires of Islam. And before I go on to tell you, I will come back to this slide again, but I will just tell you. So we're starting 200 years before, after Isa alayhi salam, up to 600 years. So that's the Sasani Empire. बस रहे थे यानी सिलजूक भी सासानी भी बस रहे थे यानी सिलजूक भी था हाँ नहीं सासानी का इसी And then the Byzantine Empire that started about 330 years after Isa alayhi salam and lasted up until 1400 years. So 570 AD, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born, and he passed away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took him in 632 AD, and then you have a period of 671 to 6. So from 632 to about 656 or 661. So about 32 years, 31 years of, or 30 years of Khulafai Rashidun. And then you have the Umayyad Caliphate from 661 to 750, roughly 90 years. And then they were eliminated from the Muslim mainlands, but then they set up their presence in Spain. So from 750 to 1031, about 300 years of Umayyads. And then the Abbasi were in 750 AD, and they were there until 1250, until the Mongols ransacked Baghdad. The Samanites were the people that existed in parallel in Iran, and then the Seljuk. Once the Abbasi Caliphate became weak at this point, so these people were replaced by the Seljuk. बस रहे थे ये Seljuk भी, Tatari भी, Sinha. The Seljuks of Iran, about 150 years, and then they lasted in Anatolia for another 200 years. And then we're going to Africa, the Morabitun, Al-Moravids, and then we have the Al-Muhid, and they started somewhere middle of like year 1000, and they were there up until year 1300, about 300 years. And then the Roman Seljuks were here. These were the people who were in the modern day Turkey. And we'll look at their maps to have a better understanding, and then we'll come back to this timeline. Il-Khanids are people who were descendants from the Mongols. So they were there for about year 1200 to around 1400. And then the Nasrid kingdom. So even though the Muslims, majority of the Muslims were eliminated from Spain, the Nasrids were there from around 1200 to 1492 in Granada or Grenada. They built Alhambra. And the Mamluks were there in Egypt, roughly around year 1200 to around 1500s. Who were the Mamluks? I mean, so, and then you have the Ottoman Empire from around 1300 to about 100 years ago, 600 years. And then the Timurid Empire, Temurlan in Central Asia, for about 200 years. They were the descendants from Mongols. And then the Safavids in Iran for roughly about 250 years. And then the Mughals, that lasted from 1500 to about 1800, about 300 years. So that's a rough timeline. I found this very interesting, bar graph. So it basically tells you the different countries and tells you like how long and which particular countries are particular. Like these were the Mamluks, these were the Ottomans, so they were in northern Africa, and then they were in Iraq or where they were. So it's an interesting way to depict that, and then how long did they last by years. So that's an interesting timeline to take some time. But I'm not going to go in detail over this right now. So, this history of scholars of Islam. So before I go on to talk about the politicians, for which most people, when they talk about Islamic history, they want to see how many areas the Muslims conquered. So these were the two. You can see that Prophet ﷺ died in 632, and Imam Malik existed between 715 to 795, roughly about 100 or 78 years after Prophet ﷺ. There was another school of Imam Awza'i. However, this did not gain that much popularity. And then Imam Abu Hanifa, he died in 767, so he was born a little bit before Imam Malik, but they were both at the same time. And then the Hanafis, which most of the people from India and Pakistan are, of course, are following his two main students, Imam Shaybani and Imam Abu Yusuf. And then Imam Malik, student was Imam Shafi'i, so died in 820, and then his student was Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And so this was another school, Zahiri school, which is again not very much. So this is just the beginning of the scholarly history. And so that's something that we need to touch base down as we study history. Now today I'll just give you the timeline of the political map. So this is at the time of before the birth of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have this Iran, this is the Caspian Sea, and this is the Persian Gulf. And this is the Sasani Empire, and this Persian Empire, and this is the Eastern Roman Empire. And this is Arabia. And nobody had any interest in it at that time because it was just a hot desert. And this is northern Africa, which was under the Roman Empire. So you can see that this is the Mediterranean Sea. The white is the Mediterranean Sea, Italy, and then you have the modern day Turkey. This is the Palestine, Jordan, Syria. You have northern Egypt, and you come to Tripolitania, which is the area around Tripoli in Libya. It's all under the Roman Empire. So people were wondering, when they watched the movie Gladiator, he was a Spaniard, and then he moved to Africa, and where they filmed that scene where he's fighting in this very mud castle. This actually is in Morocco. It's called. No, it's close to where Zaza. Yeah, but that we visited there. We didn't know that that's where. But the Roman Empire was spread all around Mediterranean. And this is the Sassanid Empire. the Persians. So the Persians and the Romans were always fighting, and when Rasulullah ﷺ announced his Ba'sa, just I think about a year after it, Surah Rum was revealed, where it said that in the nearby lands the Romans have been defeated, but they will be returning victorious later on. This is when Abu Bakr Siddiq received the title of Siddiq, because somebody said, well, how come your companion, somebody asked Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu, how come your prophet is saying such and such when the Iranians are annihilating the Romans? So Abu Bakr said, yeah, if the Prophet ﷺ said this, then he must be right. And he then had a bet on it, but then he came back to the Prophet ﷺ and said, I have bet this many camels, and how many years. The Prophet told him to go, 10 years. So they were always fighting. So this is the Byzantine Empire, and then when the Muslims started expanding beyond Arabia, you can see that they started having these areas come under Muslim Caliphate. So this is the time of Islamic Empire and the time of Prophet ﷺ. And then this was during the time of Abu Bakr, just the Arabian Peninsula. And then when we go to the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, this is the time of Umar. And then at the time of Ali and Umar radiallahu, there are some more during the time of Uthman. And during the time of Ali radiallahu anhu, there were not that many extensions. And then the Umayyads took all the way, this is Atlantic Ocean, so called Bahre Zulmat. तो दश्त हैं दरिया भी न छोड़े हमने बहरे जुल्मात में दौड़ा दिए घोड़े हमने. Iqbal said that because Akhbar bin Nafi, he was the conqueror of these lands, Al-Maghrib, and he put his horse in the water and said that, oh Allah, if this ocean would not have been in my way, I would have kept on going, claiming lands for your glory. So this is the Rizul Atlantic. So that's at the time of Umayyads. And then they also, in 711, the Umayyads entered Spain, a small group of about, I think 7,000 people with Tariq bin Ziyad landed here in what is now known as Jabal Tariq or Gibraltar. And then within a matter of 11 years, they conquered all this area of the Iberian Peninsula. There is a big mountain range here. It's called Pyrenees, and that's why they could not go. However, the Muslims, if you can see, from 711, the Muslims reached here in Tours. So while we were visiting Toulouse here, and Paris is here, it's halfway. And one of the historians wrote that had the Moors not been defeated in Tours, the language of Oxford and Cambridge today would have been Arabic. So that's somebody wrote it, but this is the Muslims. It's amazing to see in like 20 years they conquered this area. So it's very interesting how this happened in such a short period of time. And then you can see this area, 751, Samarkand. Transoxania is the area of all these Central Asia. So Muslims were there in within 120 years of Prophet ﷺ. Very interesting period. How did this happen?
We go back
827. Yeah, Sicily, and the Muslims actually even raided, this is Rome, so they even raided Vatican at one time. And they had Sicily for over 300, about 300 years. And only in the time like 1030, Sicily was, the Normans helped the Byzantines vacate Sicily. Cyprus, in the time of Osman, radiallahu anhu, and there was a Muslim army that went as far as Constantinople also during the time of Umayyads. 674, besieged without success, and that's when Sayyidina Abu Ayyub Ansari, they say he was martyred there, he died there and was buried. And then this area, this is where the epicenter of the earthquake was. But Mardin in Turkey, Khalid bin Walid's army had besieged Mardin at that time. For the sake of time, I'm just going to go fast. What time is the?
1:05.
Okay. So today I'm just giving the timeline and just a brief overview. And then you look at the Abbasi Khilafah. So for 750 to around 1000, the Abbasis were very strong. Harun Rashid died in about 850, and after him they started becoming weak. And in this area, a lot of different empires popped up. But this was the Sunni empire of Banu Abbas. You have the Arabian Peninsula, and at that time, actually Khorasan, they killed it said that they killed everybody in Iran who was Arabic, thinking that they might be tied to Umayyads, Banu Umayyah. So one of the princes escaped, Abdurrahman. And after about 100 years of Umayyad rule, Spain was, even though the Muslims had conquered most of it during the times of Umayyad, but there were very small kingdoms there, and they were fighting all the time. And so Tawaif al-Muluk. So they had very weak government. And when the Abbasids took over, and that's a very interesting story, how they took over. But when the Abbasids took over, one of the princes, Abdurrahman, he escaped to Spain and set up the government there. And it's called Abdurrahman al-Dakhil, the first one, or the one who entered. And he was the one who built, he started building the Masjid al-Khattaba. मेरी आँखों का नूर है तू, मेरे दिल का सुरूर है तू. Iqbal wrote about that. That he's शाम के सहरा में हो तेरे सुतू बेशुमार, शाम के सहरा में हो जैसे उजूमे नखील. So he built Masjid al-Khattaba with all these multitude of pillars, as if they are the stems and of the date palms, trunks of date palms. So Al-Andalus, this is the, and then Abdurrahman al-Dakhil established the Umayyad Caliphate in Al-Andalus. Toledo was the historic capital of Spain, and it's built on it's a beautiful city. We had to visit there 2 years ago, and you have to go there in winter time. Don't go there in summer; it's very hot. But when you go there, you can. It was built on a hill, so it was a historic capital. And then, however, when the Muslims started getting pushed back, the Christians united. So they lost Toledo in about 1080 or 1070. And then they built a new capital once they took over in 1500 they built a new capital, Madrid, just north of it, because it's on a plain, whereas Toledo, for strategic purposes, built on a hill. And then Valencia is in a land between two rivers, and that's where the Muslims built a phenomenal canal system, and it became the agricultural hub of Europe. And Spain still is the largest producer of agriculture produce for Europe. So Valencia was called Valencia. Murcia, that's where most of the Clint Eastwood movies are filmed. The Good, the Bad, and Ugly. So if you see them, they filmed the first movie here, and this is and then Cordoba, that's the crown jewel of Islamic civilization there. Masjid al-Khataba is in Cordoba, and Gharnata is the last stronghold. That's where Alhambra is, and Alhambra is built on a hill. They could not conquer it because it was so hard. They had to give it up. And the Nasrids, they knew. While I was coming back from Pakistan, we had just visited Alhambra last 2 years ago, so I was watching this documentary. And he said that the Nasrids knew that they're going to be kicked out of Spain. So they said, we're going to build something that will make the people remember us. So they knew they were going away. So the effort and the art they put in, and to date now it's still regarded as the most beautiful building that exists. And Lisbon, Portugal, so. And you can see, how brisk were these conquests, with 712, 714. Majority of these lands were politically under the control of Muslims. Now, we're into late 900s now. The Abbasis are, weaker now because, of course, their caliphs are doing things that they're not supposed to do, and weak. So Ghaznavi Empire, look at how huge it is. And Mahmud of Ghazna goes in and, attacks India 17 times. So you and I are Muslim and exist in India because the efforts of Mahmud. And he went to Somnath all the way here. This was the strongest and his last attack. And Lahore was captured. So just amazing how big of an area Mahmud of Ghaznavi and Mahmud of Ghazni had it. And this empire lasted roughly about 150 to 200 years. You can see all the Iran. Now, after the Ghaznavis were weak, you see a lot of these little empires popping up. And Ali Buya was a Shia empire in Iran, and they actually.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu
So the Alim Buya, they controlled this area for about roughly 50, 60 years. And these were the Shia, and they were controlling the Abbasi Khilafah. The Caliph was basically a puppet in their hands. And then the Fatimid Caliphate is also a Shia Khilafat that was formed in all the way from the Palestine, Jordan, North Africa. And Al-Azhar University was founded by the Fatimids. Cairo was founded by the Fatimids. So the Samanid Empire, Abbasid Caliphate is shrinking, and then you have some other empires popping up in roughly, and this is the Fatimid Empire, roughly about 200 years, controlling majority of North Africa and all the way to the Hijaz, Mecca and Medina were under the Fatimids, and as I said, they established Al-Azhar. At that time, Undus was under Umayyads, and the Abbasids were practically not functional anymore, so this was the only Sunni Khilafah at that time. So the Umayyads, 929 to 1031. So they were present even after 1031, but and then you can see Fatimids were there for about 250 years. And Abbasis were there for 750 to 1258, but their last 200 years were in a state of extreme weakness. So then the Seljuks came. So the Seljuk, if you know, on Turkish TV they made an excellent serial called Seljuklu, the great Seljuks, and Tughril Bey and his son Al-Barsalan and his son Malik Shah. These were the great, and the Prime Minister Nizam al-Mulk, he is regarded as one of the greatest political minds. He was the one who established Madrasa Nizamiya, where Imam Ghazali and Imam al-Juwayni, who was the teacher of Imam Ghazali, were there. So, and the Battle of Manzikert 1071, Al-Barsalam defeated the Byzantine forces, and that allowed the Seljuk Turks to enter into Anatolia. So Seljuks, were the mightiest empire of the time. Nobody was as powerful as them, and they actually retook Hijaz and Mecca and Medina, and then Shawkat-e Sanjar-o Salim Tere Jalal ki Nahud, Fitre Junaid Bayazid Tera Jamal-e Naqab. So Sanjar was the Sultan. Sanjar was the son of Malik Shah, and so even after the Seljuks became weak, one of the Kulich Bey, one of the descendants of the Seljuks, they founded this empire in Rome, and they were there until the Ottomans started coming up. So this is the Seljuk Sultanate in modern day Turkey and Anatolia. And this is the Holy Roman Empire. So the Byzantine and the Roman empires split. They called it Holy Roman Empire, and Voltaire said the Holy Roman Empire is neither holy nor Roman nor an empire. But they called it the Holy Roman Empire, and it's this area where Vienna and Prague was the capital of that. And at that time you can see the northern Africa as you have the Almoravids or Moravitin. Yusuf bin Tashfin from Marrakesh went on to help out the people in Spain and freed them from the Christian advancements. So Almoravids were there. And then now the Christians started coming, so the empires are getting weak. So I'll try to finish it in the next 2-3 minutes. So the Christians were coming in, the Crusader kingdoms were established. This is where Israel and Palestine and Jordan, are currently. And then Sultan Salahuddin Ayyubi defeated and took over the Holy Lands in late 1100s, 1190, and then first he took Egypt, and the Syria was already freed from the Shiite kingdom, but he took the Egypt from the Shiite caliphate, and then he was able to take over the Holy Lands. And we can see that the Al-Moravidun are here at that time. Now this is the Khwarizm kingdom, and it's a huge kingdom. After the Seljuks become weak, and then this is the Mongols. And the Khwarizms killed the messenger of Mongol, Genghis Khan, providing him the excuse to invade. And then the Mongols came in and took all over this area. But you can see how strong Khwarizm was. And the Khwarizm king, Alauddin Khwarizm Shah, and his son Jalaluddin, about which we made that serial, Akhri Chatan, in Pakistan. Now, after them, the Ghaznavi Empire, then the Ghanis were there, and they went all the way deep into India. So I will continue, inshallah, next whenever feasible. Jazakallah khair.
फिर हमें वहाँ से जाके किसी साल हम आते थे लेकिन हमें लगा कि ये बहुत दूर जाते हैं अगर वहाँ पर होते हम चले जाते हैं
नंबर भी अगर बता दें
मैं फिर भाई नॉर्मली आते हैं इस टाइम पे तो
आते हैं
जोर पे तो आ ही जाते हैं
ख़त्म हो गया प्रोग्राम शुरू होने वाला है
खत्म